Today I'm going to show you how to turn a plain block of tofu into a mouth-wateringly garlicky tofu steak with mushrooms, so stick around. Tofu often gets a bad rap as being bland, but I like to think of it more like a blank canvas that can be used to paint on textures, tastes, and flavors. This tofu steak is a popular home-cooked meal here in Japan that takes the classic soy protein and turns it into something a bit more modern.
In my version, I coat the tofu steak in starch before pan frying it in garlic oil. Once sauced, the crust turns into a glaze that holds the steak in its flavorful embrace, and the sauteed mushrooms and garlic chips complete the package with loads of umami and crispy bursts of garlicky goodness.
Sounds good, right? Let's take a look at our ingredients.
The first thing you're going to need is a block of extra firm tofu. Regular firm tofu will work, but the texture won't be quite as meaty. To prepare this, I'm going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1 tablespoon of potato starch. To fry this up, I'm using 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, 2 very large cloves of garlic, 100 grams of enoki mushrooms, 60 grams of fresh shiitake mushrooms, and some scallions for garnish. For our Japanese steak sauce, I'm using 2 tablespoons of sake, 2 tablespoons of ketchup, 1.5 tablespoons of soy sauce, and 1 tablespoon of dark brown sugar. The first thing I'm going to do is slice our block of tofu in half to create 2 steaks. Then I'm going to set the tofu steaks onto a wire rack set over a tray to drain off any excess water. Sprinkling both sides of the tofu with salt lightly seasons it while drawing out even more water. This is super important so we can get the surface of the tofu nice and brown and give it a meaty texture. Now I'm going to place a tray on top of the tofu and then weigh it down with something heavy for about an hour. While we wait for the tofu to drain, I'm going to cut a slit almost all the way through the root end of each clove of garlic. Then you can use the root end like a pull tab to easily peel the garlic. These cloves are pretty huge, so if your garlic is smaller, be sure to use more than 2 of them. Now I'm going to thinly slice the garlic. We're going to be frying these up into garlic chips, and the slices need to be the same thickness to crisp evenly, so I highly recommend using a mandolin here. These slices are about 1 millimeter thick. For the shiitake mushrooms, you want to use a damp paper towel to remove any growing medium that's stuck to the cap. I usually start from the center and wipe outwards while I rotate the cap with each swipe. Be sure to get the underside of the cap as well. Then I'm going to trim the stems off of the mushrooms. Now we can slice the shiitake mushrooms about 5 millimeters or 1/5 of an inch thick. I love the umami-rich flavor of shiitakes for this, but any flavorful mushroom like maitake, portobello, or porcini will work. For the enoki mushrooms, trim off the bottom part with the woody growing medium attached. Then you can separate the individual stalks of mushroom like this. Finally, I'm going to chop up some scallions to use as a garnish. These are very thin Japanese scallions, but regular scallions or chives will work as well. You could also chop up a mix of herbs like parsley, chervil, or tarragon. Alright, let's check and see how our tofu steaks are doing. As you can see, they've released a bunch of water, so I'm going to transfer them to the tray on top. Then I'm going to crack a generous amount of black pepper onto both sides of the tofu. By the way, this isn't sponsored and I bought this myself, but this pepper grinder from Man Kitchen is ridiculously good. Okay, now I'm going to dust the tofu on all sides with the potato starch. This not only helps the tofu to brown, it's also going to create a crust that'll absorb the sauce like a sponge.
Well, that's it for the prep, but before we fry these up, I want to thank everyone who's supporting this channel. Whether you just hit that like button on this video, or you're a patron with access to my private stash of recipes, I'm super grateful to have you in my community, so thank you. Alright, let's fry these up.
I'm gonna add the vegetable oil to a frying pan that's been heating over low heat, and then I'm gonna add the garlic. Spread the garlic out in a single layer and let this fry. It's gonna take about 5 minutes to crisp these into garlic chips, but it's important to go low and slow here, otherwise the garlic will burn and become bitter. Once they're spread into a single layer, start flipping them over. By the time you're done flipping, some of the chips should have started turning tan around the edges. Flip these over once more, and once you don't see any bubbles forming around them, it's time to get them out of the pan and onto a paper towel-lined plate. Although they're the same thickness, some of these are going to brown faster than others, so remove them from the pan as they brown. Once you've got all the garlic out of the pan, you're ready to fry the tofu steak in the garlic-infused oil. I'm going to turn up the heat to medium at this point so we can get a nice brown crust. Make sure the steaks aren't touching or they're going to stick together. Now we just need to fry these up until they're golden brown on one side. This took me about 3 minutes. Once you can see the tofu starting to brown a little around the edges, flip the steaks over and brown the second side. By the way, these little bits of garlic left in the pan are burnt, so I'm going to use a spoon to scoop them out. Okay, I think I want a little more color on these, so I'm going to go ahead and flip these over again. You can keep doing this until your tofu steaks are brown to your liking. Now this is what I was looking for. Okay, let's get these out of the pan. Now I'm going to add the mushrooms into the pan and stir fry them until they've started to brown. This will take about 3 minutes. These are looking perfect, so let's transfer these to a bowl. To make our sauce, I'm going to add the sake, soy sauce, brown sugar, and ketchup to the pan. Then I'm going to turn up the heat to bring this to a boil, and we're going to let the sauce cook until it starts to thicken. This will also burn off the alcohol from the sake. Okay, the bubbles are getting big and glossy, so let's get the tofu steaks back into the pan. Then I'm going to flip these over repeatedly until they're glazed in a nice thick layer of sauce. To finish this off, I'm going to add the mushrooms back into the pan to coat them with the sauce. And our tofu steaks are done! Alright, let's plate this up. I'm going to put a tofu steak onto this beautiful plate from Musubi Kiln. Then I'm going to top it off with a generous helping of mushrooms. Let's sprinkle on some chopped scallions for garnish. Top it off with some of those crispy garlic chips. And our tofu steak is ready to eat.
Okay, this steak is glistening and garlicky, so let's give it a shot. Itadakimasu. All right, I'm gonna get some crispy garlic chips there. We'll get some of the steak and some mushrooms. Oops, lost the garlic. Because we pressed the excess water out of it and browned the outside, the steak takes on this nice meaty texture, and that potato starch coating on the outside has soaked up the sauce like a sponge, and it's turned into this beautiful glaze. I mean, you're not gonna fool anyone into thinking this is a beef steak, but whether you're vegan, vegetarian, or a full-on omnivore, this is just plain delicious. All right, I'm gonna go in for another bite here. Get some shiitake this time, some of that enoki, get lots of tofu here, and of course we gotta get the garlic on there. Ooh. Oh man, that is so good. Tofu steak makes for a delicious, satisfying meal at home, but it's also fantastic packed into a bento box lunch. So I hope you'll give it a try. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by giving this a big thumbs up and by sharing it with all your friends that are trying to eat a little healthier. Well, I'm gonna go have the rest of this tofu steak for lunch, but be sure to check out this playlist for more vegan-friendly recipes. And I'll catch you in the next one.